The Death Mage Who Doesn't Want a Fourth Time. Chapter 76. Two Adventurers at the Adventurer Guild. After being betrayed by her stepfather and sold to a slave trader, Mary was stricken by despair. Mary's real father had died when she was young, and her mother had remarried before dying of disease. Deciding that he couldn't raise a daughter that he wasn't related to, he ignored Mary's mother's final wish and sold Mary. Betrayed by someone she had loved like her real father, Mary gave up hope in living. A girl in her early teenage years like her would not be purchased by a brothel unless she had been blessed with exceptional looks. It was common for such girls to be bought at cheap prices and worked to death performing harsh manual labor in a mine. Nobody could blame Mary for falling into despair. "Oh, what a beautiful bride. Please tell me your name." That was why she actually felt relieved to learn that she had been given to a vampire as payment, thinking that it would all be over soon. Even if by some miracle she was blessed enough to be purchased by a good buyer and set free one day, she no longer had a family that cared about her. Living out her remaining decades in such sadness would bring her nothing but pain. "So, you are unable to speak. It matters not. I will soon be able to taste everything with these fangs and this tongue." As the vampire's fangs were revealed, his well-featured face twisted into a beast-like expression. As those fangs closed in on Mary's neck, the window, which contained glass unlike most other windows in the city of Nearchy, other than the windows of the Lord's house, shattered and glass scattered across the floor. "What? Ugh!" Black shadows flashed past his back and sides, each of them causing a spray of blood to erupt from his body. Mary simply stared blankly at this unbelievable sight. The being in front of her was a vampire, the embodiment of evil that was supposed to be defeated by champions or heroes. Someone was tearing such a being into pieces in a one-sided fashion. "Damn you, you coward!" the vampire cursed. "Wounds like these will soon—" "They won't heal," said a voice. "These are Kanui that apply the Holy Sun's healing negation." "There's also deadly poison on them that works on vampires," said another. "What? That can't be—" With blood spraying from his mouth as if he were a fountain, the vampire stopped moving. The vampire that was supposed to grant Mary an end to her life had perished. His corpse had even been carried away by a masked titan. Vaguely wondering what would happen to her now, Mary was overwhelmed with fear. Instinctively, she picked up a sharp fragment of glass. "Whoa!" Before Mary could bring the piece of glass to her throat, the smaller assassin had grabbed her arm. "Why are you stopping me?" she demanded. "I'm begging you, please, let me die." "No," the assassin said. "It would be problematic if you were to die." "Why?" she asked. "You can find people who can replace me if you look about anywhere." "There's nobody who could replace you," said the assassin, with a forceful tone in his voice. "Huh?" Mary instinctively let the strength flow out of her arm. Braga used this opportunity to seize the piece of glass and throw it aside. And then he began to treat Mary's hand that had been cut by the glass. "Everyone cares about you," he told her. "Don't go and die so easily." Braga and the others had been asked by Vandaloo, their king, to protect as many of the vampire's victims and captives as possible. That was why they had been careful to protect victims like Mary and keep them safe. Braga was not lying, but in this moment, for the broken-hearted Mary, he was like a prince on a white horse. "So, that's how it is, King. This is my lover, Mary," Braga announced. "Please, give your blessings for our marriage." You never really know where you're going to meet the one, Vandaloo thought, as he looked at the proud-looking Braga and the girl standing next to him, who looked to be around 12 or 13 years old. "I don't really mind giving my blessings, but Braga is a black goblin. Are you all right with that?" Vandaloo asked. Black goblins were far more human-like in appearance than regular goblins, and they had good personalities like Braga's. Though Vandaloo could understand being friends, he had to wonder, wasn't there still a barrier that would make most people hesitant to choose a black goblin as their spouse?
"Of course," Mary replied, despite Vandaloo's doubts. "The only one who cared about me is my mother, who passed away. I'm sure it's destiny that Braga and the others saved me from being killed by that vampire."
I see," said Vandaloo.
You won't be able to come back to this country for at least 10 more years. Do you still feel that way?" "I don't mind." "Then I don't have anything to do other than to give you my blessings and say congratulations."
If Mary herself was satisfied, then it was probably fine. In fact, Braga, the vice-captain of the ninja unit, was the most successful of the black goblins, and a fine individual. There was nothing to object to. And Mary would probably be able to live a more luxurious lifestyle if she came to Talosheim.
"Ah, Holy Son, about the prostitutes that the scoundrels held captive, and the women working for them,"
Zran began. For some reason, his words were rather inarticulate. As Vandaloo turned to look at him, it was clear, even through his mask, that he was feeling troubled.
"What is it?" Vandaloo asked. "I'm planning on using the mental encroachment skill to keep them quiet, give them some money, and then release them."
He only planned to use the fangs of dark nights that he had taken over for a few months at most, so he had no intention of continuing the management of their businesses like brothels. He was intending to pull out right away, so he was planning to dispose of the wicked female management, pretending to be prostitutes, and silence the rest before releasing them.
"About that," said Zran, "after seeing Mary Jo-chan, they seem to have misunderstood and are under the impression that they won't be killed if they suck up to us. They're having a mass marriage interview over there with the black goblins."
"Wow."
"And none of them are used to women, so things have turned out quite interesting."
"Women are sturdy, aren't they? So, Vandaloo-sama, what will we be doing with these women?"
Indeed, what should Vandaloo do with them?
"First of all, let's conduct interviews and physical examinations," he said. "Honey, you have to tell him about me as well," said a woman.
"Ah, that's right, King. I have a lover too,"
said another black goblin. Around the same time, those who had conspired to destroy the cultivation project, led by the next Lord of the Hartner Duchy, the second son Belton, had gathered to report the situation.
"So, you mean to tell me that our plans have come to nothing because of this damn pear boy?"
"Precisely, Karkan Dono." Karkan, a knight of the Hartner family's eldest son, Lucas, seemed to doubt the report of Frodo, the man who had been disguising himself as a priest of Alda.
"That is what you say, but—"
"No, I do not mean to say that I distrust you people, but still it is a little—" Nobody could blame Karkan for stroking his goatee with a suspicious look in his eyes. The contents of the report of Frodo and his companions were simply too bizarre. A Dhampir had flown through the sky towards the 5th cultivation village to save all of the villagers from the poison that had been distributed there. In addition to appearing from the sky bare-handed to defeat a group of orcs attacking the village, he created a well in the blink of an eye, providing an abundant source of water to the village that had been suffering from a water shortage. Karkan himself had ordered the knights under his command to deliver poisoned fertilizer to the 2nd cultivation village. It was supposed to become a ghost town by next spring. But apparently the Dhampir had come and taught the villagers how to use goblins as emergency rations. And Frodo claimed that there was no doubt that the Dhampir was involved in the fact that the bandits dispatched by the spies in the city had gone missing. Karkan's men were reporting that all of this was done by a single Dhampir boy. It wasn't unreasonable for Karkan to think that all of this was suspicious. At the very least, Karkan Dono, I saw the incident with the orcs myself. With these very eyes, I saw the orcs I sent being defeated by the Dhampir in an instant, said the man who had tamed the orcs. He was a beast mage, a job that allowed the creation of mental bonds with monsters through magic in order to control them. Considering his words in addition to Frodo's, it was difficult to believe that these reports were all lies. And to counteract the poison that I distributed, that poison takes time to kill its victims, as it is designed to look like a disease. But it cannot be countered by normal anti-poison spells or antidotes. That Dhampir's skill is not superficial by any means, said a young man, the spy who had used makeup to disguise himself as a middle-aged traveling merchant. The men's words were too unnatural to assume that they were simply making excuses for failing in their work. Thus, Karkan decided to take their reports as truth. He was in charge of an entire order of knights. He had seen with his own eyes that there were men who could achieve unbelievable things despite their age and appearance if they served as knights for long enough. That child was a Dhampir, was he? As difficult as it is to believe, if he is indeed a Dhampir, it is a feasible story, said Karkan. But in other words, it simply means that there was a capable healing mage with the strength of a D-class adventurer in those villages, he concluded. The fact that the Dhampir had defeated 3 orcs was impressive, but he had essentially defeated one with a surprise attack and used his momentum to defeat the other 2. This would likely be possible for anyone with the strength of a D-class adventurer. More importantly, he is not using the village as a base for activity like the refugee adventurers. You said that he was simply passing by towards the city to become an adventurer, didn't you? In other words, it simply means that we must get things done while that child is not in the villages, said Karkan. Will that really be all right? Frodo asked. Karkan laughed. You worry too much. Even that Dhampir wouldn't do something like setting up guards to watch over the villages, he said. I suppose you're right. In reality, Vandaloo had stationed his familiars, Lemures, as well as dozens of stone golems in each cultivation village. If that Dhampir child is intending to become an adventurer, he should be forced to attend the adventurer's school for at least a year, said Karkan. During that time, we will pretend to be bandits and destroy the cultivation villages. I will lead the men myself. The men stirred at Karkan's announcement that he and his men would act as bandits. Is that really all right? If it were to be discovered, even if our victims are mere refugees, we will be hanged or turned into slaves. We must be willing to take at least this much risk, said Karkan. Everything is for the sake of exterminating these shamelessly disgraceful fools from the Sauron Duchy, who are eating away at our Hartner Duchy like parasites, for the sake of the people and for the sake of Lord Lucas. As Vandaloo had thought, Karkan did not acknowledge the refugees who had escaped the Sauron Duchy, including those living in the cultivation villages, as people of his own nation. The people that he referred to were the people of the Hartner Duchy. Those from other duchies, such as the Sauron Duchy, were essentially foreigners. With that said, Karkan's true motive was that he was impatient because he had not achieved anything meaningful in Lucas's name. So even if Lucas did succeed the family, Karkan wouldn't achieve the social status he wanted. My company is due to go on an expedition next month, said Karkan. At that time, we will start with the 7th cultivation village and then go to attack the rest of the cultivation villages. Frodo Dono, I would have you join us as well. Me? To ensure that we do not leave anyone alive, we need you, Frotodono, as you know your way around the villages from pretending to preach to them. If this succeeds, you will become a vassal to the Duke's house, too. I'm counting on you."
Of course."
Despite the ominous feeling that he got from becoming involved in a deeper conspiracy than he had counted on, Froto could not turn back now. Vandaloo, who had inadvertently put a stop to all of Karkan's plans, was passing through the marketplace and heading toward the Adventurers Guild. His objective was, of course, to register as an adventurer. "Things have changed after I learned various things, but now is the perfect opportunity to register." Now that it was clear that the Hartner Duchy had betrayed Talosheim, Vandaloo had a new objective of rescuing the Titan slaves from the slave-run mines, where they were still being exploited. He had already contacted Talosheim regarding this. Borkus was apparently so furious that he wanted to invade the duchy right this moment. How reliable he was. The reason Vandaloo was still registering as an adventurer despite this was because if he let this chance pass him now, the next opportunity to do so might be years away. Vandaloo had also disposed of the vampire that had been stationed here by the pure-breed vampires, worshipping the evil god of joyful life, turning him into an ally. Even the criminal syndicate controlling the city of Niarki had become his puppet. "I'll quickly register, leave the city right away, regroup with Eleonora and the others, wait for night to fall, and then fly towards the duchy's capital." Either way, Vandaloo needed to wait for nightfall before flying, so there was no problem with this. It would be problematic if he had a cliched encounter with a delinquent adventurer, though. "Still, it's good that I learned that there are a lot of things I need to work as an adventurer. To think that I'd at least need a house." Normally, adventurers would not need a house to work as an adventurer. New adventurers used cheap lodging houses, while many veteran adventurers used inns that they were familiar with as their bases. However, Vandaloo had circumstances unlike those of other adventurers, in that he had Borkus, Zadiris, Sam, and Eleonora to worry about. They would not be treated as people. They were monsters that Vandaloo had tamed. As such, Vandaloo could not use an inn. It was similar to restaurants and boarding houses on Earth, where they didn't allow their customers to bring pets. And in this case, they were not pets, but monsters that were feared more than wild beasts. If they were small monsters like pixies, they probably wouldn't be any problems, and for those like Eleonora and Zadiris who looked like normal people at first glance, things might work out at certain inns. But it would certainly be impossible for Nochen and the Bone Man. Of course, there were adventurers who were tamers, but when they used inns, they left their monsters in barns. Whether they were goblins, kobolds, or even ghouls, they would have to stay in barns. Because of this, if Vandaloo wanted to use an inn, Borkus, Bone Man, and even Eleonora and the ghouls, if they were not allowed to use a guest room, would have to be treated like horses and kept in a barn. Truly savage behavior. Though, after realizing this last night, Eleonora had prepared herself for this, thinking, "To humiliate myself in such a way before anyone other than Vandaloo-sama. But if it is for Vandaloo-sama's sake. In order to work as an adventurer, I need to attend the adventurer's school. But even before that, I need to take the money from bandits and criminal organizations, gather treasures from dungeons, and buy a big house," said Vandaloo. Isn't it normally the other way around? It was strange to think that in order to become an adventurer and make achievements for himself, he needed to become rich and acquire a house. But if he worked alone, he couldn't acquire experience points due to his curse, and he wouldn't be able to endure the loneliness. On top of that, he had no confidence that he would be able to gain companions to form a party at the adventurers' school. A house was necessary after all.
Even if I do use money to buy a house, I can't walk around cities publicly with everyone unless I retrieve collars and necklaces that prove that I've tamed them. Becoming an adventurer is so troublesome, Vandaloo thought aloud as he passed the deserted Church of Vida and arrived at the Adventurers Guild building. It was a 2-story building built in an area so large that the branch in the 7th Cultivation Village, the entire Jack-of-all-trades store, could fit inside it dozens of times over. Excluding the buildings of the region's lord, it was among the 5 largest buildings in the city of Nearchy. The buildings for guild branches in cities really are big. Even Vandaloo, who normally lived in the royal palace of Talosheim, was impressed. He gave a short prayer, hoping that he wouldn't get into a fight with some delinquent adventurer. "Let's go." He gathered his resolve and opened the door to the guild. The time of day where the guild would be packed with adventurers looking for requests to accept had passed, so there were few adventurers present. There were receptionists sitting at the reception counter, and behind them were other employees doing paperwork. Vandaloo proceeded silently and managed to reach the counter, without getting into any fights. "It seems that my prayers have been heard," Vandaloo thought, but he was mistaken. It was simply that most of the adventurers hadn't even noticed them, and even if they did notice him, there weren't many who would pick a fight with a child like him. Most children who come to the Adventurers Guild are either newbies coming to register, G-class adventurers, or students of the Adventurers School. And if someone were to say, "You think a brat like you can be an adventurer?" and pick a fight with a G-class adventurer who did work like manual labor in the city and cleaning the guild, they would only receive scornful laughter. Things would only be more tragic for them if they were to pick a fight with a student enrolled at the Adventurers School. Positions as instructors at the Adventurers School are popular for adventurers who have retired from the front lines. If people pick fights for no reason and try to threaten others, they would only anger their seniors and make it harder for themselves to be re-employed in the future. So the cliché scenario of the boorish senior adventurer who picks fights with newbies only occurs when new adventurers graduate the Adventurers School and begin their real adventures. Alternatively, it is often the child who starts the fight. There are indeed people in all lines of work who are so helplessly low that common sense is lost on them, but they wouldn't be present in every guild branch at every hour of the day. Perhaps in the sense that there were no such people currently in the Nearchy branch of the guild, Vandaloo's prayer had indeed been heard. "Excuse me," Vandaloo said, calling out to the receptionist. "I want to register as an adventurer." "Huh? Oh, yes." It seemed that the receptionist had not noticed him. She looked surprised for a moment before quickly giving him a businesslike smile and handing him a pen and paper form. "Please fill out your name, age, race, and specialties if you have any. Do you need someone to fill it out on your behalf?" she asked. "No, it's not a problem," said Vandaloo. "But what sorts of things should I write under specialties?" He had heard about the application process for the Adventurers Guild of 200 years ago from Borkus, and the process in the Merg Shield Nation from Kachia. But things were different in different time periods and different nations. It was best to make sure he was filling out the form correctly. "For specialties, you should write things like any training you have received from former adventurers, affinities for attributes, your qualities, and any unique skills you possess," said the receptionist. "Even my unique skills? Don't you find out my skills when you issue my guild card?" Vandaloo asked. "Yes, that is correct, but your skills that are revealed when you register are kept confidential, so they will only be known to the staff member in charge of your registration. When you write your unique skill in the specialties field of the form, it is a declaration of your intent to make that unique skill public and make use of it in completing requests, the receptionist explained. For example, if an adventurer possessed a unique skill that granted the ability to deal extra damage against certain species of monsters, such as Goblin Slayer or Dragon Slayer, the guild would set up requests suitable for that skill and introduce appropriate clients to that adventurer. But if the adventurer wanted to keep the skill a secret, it would basically be sealed within the mind of the staff member. It seems like there would be exceptions, though. Like they would actually tell the guildmaster or something like that. The Adventurers Guild was run by people, after all, so it was probably best not to rely too much on their confidentiality policy. In fact, though Vandaloo was unaware of this, a guildmaster of the Adventurers Guild in the Merg Shield Nation had fraudulently promoted the Green Wind Spear Riley at Earl Thomas Palpapek's demand. Of course, there were some guildmasters who managed their branches in a wholesome manner, but there were also those who did not. In that case, I can just leave the specialties field blank. Vandaloo would dash out of the city after registering. He submitted the form after filling in only the fields for his name, race, and age.
This is...
For some reason, the receptionist opened her eyes wide as she took the form and then gave Vandaloo a pitiful look. According to what you have written on this form, you're a 7-year-old Dhampir. Is that correct, Vandaloo-san? Even if Vandaloo tried to deceive her, his real name, age, and race would be revealed once his guild card was issued, so of course he had filled in the form with complete honesty. Yes, that's right, he told the receptionist. I suppose Dhampirs are rare after all, Vandaloo thought, as he removed the cloth concealing one of his eyes, showing her that he really was a Dhampir. Then I'm afraid you cannot register, the receptionist said, with a grave expression as she saw his crimson and purple, odd-colored eyes. Vandaloo blinked a few times, bewildered by this unbelievable response, but the receptionist's expression did not change, nor did she correct her statement. Why is that? He asked. I thought that those under the age of 10 registering to become adventurers just needed to take a simple test. If the examination was passed, if the applicant was able to demonstrate that they possessed the intelligence and decision-making ability equivalent to that of a 10-year-old child, they would be registered as G-Class adventurer. As for whether they could become F-Class or higher, just like other underage adventurers, it would be decided after they graduated from the adventurers' school. At least that was how it was supposed to be, but... Under the joint signature of Lord Belton and the Guildmaster of the Guild headquarters of the Hartner Duchy, the rules have been changed. Children under the age of 10 who have mixed blood, including blood of Vita's races that originate from monsters, such as Lamias and Centaurs, do not have the right to sit the examination, the receptionist told him. Of course, this includes Dhampirs. The system had changed so that Vandaloo could not register as an adventurer in the Hartner Duchy until he reached the age of 10, where he would be able to attend the adventurer's school. Another 3 years or so. Cassim and his friends hadn't mentioned it, but they had not intentionally kept it from Vandaloo. They were all humans. The only ones affected by this system change were beast people, titans, dark elves, and people of mixed blood of those races. Beings like vampires or lamias were considered to be monsters. Children born between humans and such beings, with their human features being more prominent than monster ones, were a minority. Cassim and his friends couldn't be blamed for not remembering the change. And now that he thought about it, Vandaloo realized that he had never told them that he was 7 years old. Because he had decapitated a goblin barbarian and used advanced life attribute magic, or at least Cassim and the others believed this, to heal even, it wouldn't be surprising if they had assumed that Vandaloo was older than he looked. I see. Yes, and rumor has it that the rules will change again this year, so that such individuals will not have the right to enroll at the Adventurers' School.
The receptionist wore a regretful expression as her words trailed off. If what she said came to pass, Vandaloo would not be able to become an adventurer for another 8 years, never mind 3.
I see,
said Vandaloo, trying to suppress his shock in order to think. It was unpleasant that Lord Belton and the Guildmaster had made a change to the system and rules that seemed to target him specifically. Including the way that Talosheim and the Titans had been betrayed, Vandaloo would never forget this. But there would be no meaning in protesting here. It was best that Vandaloo give up and leave the city. And once he dealt with the matters at hand, he would simply need to look for an opportunity to register as an adventurer in another duchy. He would not wait 8 years. It would be fine to register next year or the year after. Normally, it would be difficult for a child living in this world to go to another duchy, which was essentially another country, even if that child was in a trading city near a border between duchies. But Vandaloo would be able to do so easily by flying through the air. This wasn't a large problem. Yes, it was unpleasant, but it wasn't a large problem.
Hang on a second, will you?
The receptionist in front of Vandaloo and even the other employees and adventurers started to stir in commotion as their attention was drawn to the voice's owner. Vandaloo opened his eyes wide without turning around. He had heard this voice somewhere before.